One of the big questions is,
what is money?
For practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, very different databases.
do you believe in crypto?
Digital currency may be an answer, but it is a highly speculative asset.
I do own Bitcoin.
There is no second best.
Welcome to the Crypto Curious podcast, brought to you by the Bamboo app. Every Wednesday, we dive into the dynamic world of cryptocurrency. If you're new to crypto, we recommend starting with our early episodes where we break down the basics and give you a solid foundation to understand the crypto world. And for the Crypto Curious, the seasoned addict or the industry insider, we're here to help you unpack the latest digital news. On the show this week, Ethereum's biggest corporate holder makes a $200 million bet on MrBeast. That's right. Also, the US crypto laws have stalled again, and it might actually be a good thing. Our third story centres around the US government now holding around 3% of all Bitcoin. Is that a good thing? But before we get started into today's stories, we actually have a guest joining us this week. Isn't that right, Blake?
That's right. Very special guest, Matthew Fraser, who's an entrepreneur and a long-time crypto investor. And his focus is helping people understand crypto from the ground up, from Bitcoin basics through to portfolio construction, risk, and long-term thinking. Matt, welcome to the show.
Blake, Trace, great to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, great to have you here. We see you online. I joined your podcast late last year. I had an incredible time, and we just thought we'd love to have you on the show and get some of your thoughts on what's happening this week in the crypto world. So excited to hear your opinions and hot takes on some of these stories, because there's always something crazy happening in crypto.
Always something crazy. Yes, happy to be here and happy to share my views as always.
Fantastic.
Maybe before we do jump into the news real quick, give us a little bit of a rundown. When did you actually get into crypto? How long ago was that?
Well, do you know what? It's actually not 2015. Can you believe it? It was actually 2022, February. Okay. And before that, I was a huge skeptic. And people used to say to me, you should buy Bitcoin. I said, no, that's a big scam. And eventually making over $70 million through my Amazon business globally, I decided to make the shift to Bitcoin. And it was actually just after the 21 highs. You know, the hype is all around, everyone's talking about it. And I bought at about, my first buy was about 50,000 USD, bought all the way down, all through the dip, kept buying. At one point, I was negative $500,000, right? I still had conviction. I kept buying. I didn't give up. And of course, now I look back with a big smile on my face because I had the conviction to, dollar cost average all through that bottom period.
Well, look, we are all about the dollar cost averaging. And look, before we move on to our first story, I'll say happy 4-year anniversary next month then. That's 4 years in February that you've been
in the market. Is that considered long term now?
Yeah,
I think that's, you'll be seeing a cycle all the way through then, I guess. So, yeah, look, let's move on now to our first story. We're kicking off with a story that has made some big headlines all week, and it could actually be one of the most important crossover stories that we've seen in a long time. The largest corporate holder of Ethereum, we speak about him a little bit here on the show. His name's Tom Lee from Bitmine. He has just deployed $200 million into Beast Industries. Now, that is the company behind MrBeast, better known as Jimmy Donaldson. In our household, we are watching the show right now on TV. It's been out for the last couple of weeks. Now, this isn't a sponsorship. It's not even an ad deal. It is an equity investment, and everyone is going nuts about this. Blake, tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so Bitmine Immersion Technologies, which is the company that made the investment into MrBeast's company, holds 4.1 million Ethereum. That's about 3.3% of the total supply. And they're listed on the stock exchange. So they kind of act like a proxy for Ethereum itself because they hold so much Ethereum. And this is really interesting because their mandate has previously been mining, and now it's more being this digital asset treasury company. But they obviously see distribution of digital assets and the technologies as such an important part. And I think that's the strategy behind this move. Matthew, what do you think about this one? It's incredibly interesting.
It is interesting. I think it's an absolutely game-changing play because, as you can appreciate, even my girls right now they're 6 and 11, they are watching MrBeast, right? So I think this is about getting into the younger market, and over time, people will become more adopted into the crypto space. And having now had my own distribution business for medical products, guess what I did? I piggybacked off Amazon. So I used the Amazon distribution network across the globe. And I think this is the same play we're seeing here in this particular case.
It's very much like that, a distribution play, and in particular, potentially a PR play. Now, lots of large organizations, they hire a traditional public relations firm to get the news articles in Forbes and online in online media, or even in Reddit and things like that. But this seems to be like, the next level of that strategy of taking the PR broader and through such an influential player in the digital media space.
I think as tokenized products come out too, who knows, maybe you'll be able to buy tokenized MrBeast stock or something like that. And if they can get it in at the ground level, train the young minds into the crypto space, I think this is going to be a game changer as far as a longer play, not just a short term over the next 5 years. They're thinking probably 20, 30 years.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great segue. Tokenized stocks, I think, overlaps really well with this next story, Trace.
Yeah, it certainly does. Let's move on to that one now. So the US Senate has delayed moving forward on major crypto market structure bill. We've been speaking about this one for the last few weeks as well. And the legislation that's meant to finally bring a clarity to regulators on what crypto is bringing the industry, this one has stalled. So another delay. It might sound a bit frustrating, but when we look a little bit deeper, this pause is actually healthy for a number of different reasons. And you've been looking into this one a little bit deeper, haven't you, Blake?
That's right, Tracy. So this one's been stalled because the banking lobby and other lobbies in the US have been pushing for certain things to be put into this legislation. And just some examples of that are restrictions around yield-bearing stablecoins, oversight for decentralized finance, which is above and beyond what we have now, ethics and anti-profit amendments, which could ban government officials and even their families from holding crypto, which we all know the Trump family wouldn't be happy about. As well as that, there's many other little things that are of concern. And Brian Armstrong and other crypto leaders in the crypto ecosystem have come out and said, hey, let's just slow down and get this right before we try and rush this one through, because as it stands, this proposal or this draft legislation is really unpalatable and would really make things worse. Matthew, have you been following this story? Have you looked into any of this?
Yeah, I did some digging into this story because at first glance, you think the Clarity Act is going to be something that's going to benefit the crypto industry. And I think from the outset it was going to. But what happens over time, if everyone knows anything about politics, is the banksters and those who have vested interests like to get their greedy little mitts into the fine print. And I think that's why Brian Armstrong of Coinbase has really put his hand up and said, hang on a second, let's just slow down. I don't approve of this. What I found interesting, though, was Brad Garlinghouse of Ripple/XRP. He's come out and said, I think we should just roll with it, right? We should just roll with it as is.
No surprises there.
No surprises, right? And I think the XRP holders need to just take a step back and think, why is Brad supporting the industry, which essentially tried to debank and did debank many people in the crypto industry, and they really did try to absolutely destroy the overall crypto industry as a whole, particularly under the Biden administration.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right. So lots of concerns here, but policymakers, lobbyists, and the crypto industry in conjunction have done a really good job to getting good policy through. So I think that hopefully this is just a first draft and gives really a bit of a position to get some feedback to then get this one right moving forward.
I would find this interesting too, is that people need to think the banking industry globally holds $70 trillion worth of banking. This is globally. Do you think the banking sector wants to prevent people from moving their dollars into stable coins out of their ecosystem? Of course they do, right? They don't want them shifted. So they're going to put in all these little measures behind the scenes to try and prevent that. And that's why I think Brian Armstrong, for example, has said, let's just revisit this again before we just give it a green light.
I think he did come out and say that he does think that the green light will get given in the next couple of months. So that must mean there's a fair bit of consultation that is happening behind closed doors. So we will keep an eye on this story. Okay, moving on now. The next story sounds a little bit unbelievable if you're new to crypto and even if you're not. But this one revolves again around the US, and recent analysis has shown that the US government now controls around 3% of all Bitcoin in existence. This is mostly through seized Bitcoin through criminal investigations and other bits and pieces that have taken place over the last decade. But what's interesting here is that there is growing speculation that additional Bitcoins linked to sanctioned states, including potentially Venezuela, could also eventually end up in control of the US as well, Blake. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, there's some wild rumors out there that Venezuela is holding 600,000 Bitcoins, which I find, pretty hard to believe, that they've been using Bitcoin to settle oil that's being traded, outside of the sanctions. I don't know if this one's true or not. There are other reports that they only hold $20 million of Bitcoin, but I think it opens up a really interesting conversation about sanctions. And, we've seen previously in Europe, like a lot of the European countries seized, many of the assets from oligarchs from Russia after the Ukrainian-Russian war. And I see that Bitcoin just being another asset that can be seized by, those that are taking sanctions against other groups. And this is just going to add to the stack of Bitcoins that the US government holds. And Matt, do you think it's a good thing that the US holds 3% of all Bitcoins? And what level do you think would be before it would start creating risks in the ecosystem if they held too many?
If anyone can actually see what I'm wearing a Bitcoin hat, which means I'm a Bitcoin maxi, which means that I love the decentralization. No one actually controls it for all the reasons. There's only a 21 million market cap. So the fact that the US government holds a measly 3%, I don't actually worry about that at all. The question would be, and what we should be probably questioning, is why other countries aren't holding Bitcoin. It's a bit of a Michael Saylor play. He was upset the other day that someone was having a go at companies holding Bitcoin, but we should be having questions about why aren't other companies not holding Bitcoin. I don't think there's a threat to Bitcoin. I actually think it solidifies its value in the world asset classes as a commodity. Because if the government is willing to hold it, what does it say to other people, right? All those who think it's a scam or it's not any value behind it, it's good enough for the US government and of course other countries like El Salvador, then I think it's good enough for everyone else to jump on and want to have a piece of the action as well.
I think that was perfectly said. So I think we might round out that story there. Nicely said, Matthew. And then I think we'll go to a break. But after the break, we're going to talk about Ethereum with he's just outed himself as a Bitcoin maxi. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Matthew about Ethereum. That's after the break. Stay with us. Recently, Bamboo published a report that we think you'll find really interesting. Crypto in Australia, a long-term view. It looks at how Aussies invested in crypto in 2025 and why dollar cost averaging is a number one investing method. Plus all the good things like the role of crypto in 2026 and beyond. Download the report now from the show notes below. Welcome back. You're listening to the Crypto Curious podcast. Time now for our short, sharp news bites brought to you by the Bamboo app. I'll go first today with a little bit of news from the Ethereum co-founder, Vitalik Buterin, who has been in the press a little bit the last few weeks. He's been a bit of a keyboard warrior and spending a little bit of time on crypto Twitter. And this time he's warned that the network's push for mainstream adoption is starting to dilute its core principles of decentralization, privacy, and self-sovereignty. And he's really pushing this at the moment and saying that we really need to keep those core principles alive. He argues that recent developments and trends like heavier reliance on centralization services and hard to run full nodes put Ethereum away from its trust minimized future where it was meant to be. So What are your thoughts on this one, Blake?
Yeah, so I think at the same time, Anthony from Solana has issued almost the opposite view, saying that Solana must adapt or die and, be evolving to meet user and developer needs or really overall becomes irrelevant. So I think what he's suggesting there is, being a little bit more centralized, a little bit faster, can, push the industry forward because it would be more usable for people. So there's always trade-offs when talking about these different attributes of blockchain networks. And there's different blockchains for different use cases, obviously. So yeah, Matt, what do you think about this one? Should we stick true to our principles, or, do we make products for people?
It's a tough one because I don't pretend to guess which one's going to be the best layer one, for example. It could be Ethereum. It could end up becoming Solana, or something else will come up through the ranks. Over the years, we've actually seen other layer ones take over. You remember the days of Chainlink, things like that? Where have they gone now? So I look at it a bit differently in the sense from an investment point of view is, do you like it as a company? I don't see it as, I see it completely different to something like Bitcoin. Right, Bitcoin to me stands separate to these other types of plays. So if people think it's worthwhile investing, and some people do think spread it across, the head of Bitwise thinks spread it across all of the layer ones. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to it for these guys to succeed, which is back to your initial question, which is, does it have product market fit? Are people going to use the layer one? And if they don't use it, then it's going to die.
That's right, exactly. So there's always trade-offs to be had, and it sounds like they're just choosing one of the many ways. They're just discussing one of the many ways that blockchains can be built and used. So certainly interesting to observe. Next up, we have a crypto user who's lost $282 million through a social engineering attack. So this guy, he had Bitcoin and Litecoin that he bought very early on. He's, lasted many cycles, hasn't sold, hasn't panicked, hasn't lost it in many of the hacks or exchanges that have gone down, but he's fallen victim to a social engineering hack. Trace, do you know any more about this one?
Yeah, so this one was apparently someone who got close to him, who gained his trust and ended up being able to, steal it from him this way. So, it's not always about, the new technology and the exactly clicking the wrong link exactly. So, yeah, it's a bit sad. You have to be super, super careful on who you trust. People are going to look at getting to you whichever way they possibly can.
Well, up next, guys, we've got Michael Saylor criticised over Bitcoin Treasury strategy. Now, Michael Saylor's approach of loading Bitcoin onto company balance sheets is back in the spotlight again. As more companies flirt with the idea of holding Bitcoin as part of their treasury, the debate has fired up around whether this is smart long-term positioning or just adding unnecessary risk. Now, on one side, you've got critics saying that tying a company's finances to Bitcoin's price swings is a lot to ask, especially when markets get choppy. Their view is that most businesses aren't built to handle that kind of volatility. Shareholders might not love the ride. On the other side, supporters say that this is exactly the point. Saylor's playing the long game. He sees Bitcoin as protection against inflation, money printing, and declining purchasing power, and he's happy to wear short-term volatility if it means holding an asset with a fixed supply over the long run. Well, guys, I will say from the outset, as a Bitcoin maxi, gotta love Michael Saylor and his approach, and I do hold some MSTR as well. just a little bit of a flirt on the side. But I absolutely agree. I think Bitcoin is a long-term play, and that's how people should see it. And I advocate strongly, actually, for people to move into the SMSF space. Take the low-hanging fruit, get it out of the crappy superannuation funds you're already in, not financial advice, put it into an SMSF, just as I have done. All of my super sits in an SMSF allocated to Bitcoin.
Yeah, and you've got some further information about this. I've seen you speak about this online. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, so one of the things I love to do is to educate people in this space. It was something that I did years ago, moved all my super, allocated to Bitcoin within an SMSF. And I'm talking every single cent. And what people don't realize is you actually can do that, because under your traditional super funds, you can't allocate to Bitcoin directly. And guess what else? Under my SMSF, I can self-custody my Bitcoin in my own cold storage. So this could be something for people to consider for themselves if they want to have exposure to the best performing asset that there's ever been, particularly in the last 15 years. And even if people aren't completely convinced, the risk that people face right now is having zero exposure to Bitcoin. So even if people want to have 10, 20, 30% exposure of their super allocated into Bitcoin, they could do that too.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, yeah, can people find out some more information anywhere on this, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find out some more information through my online community. It's called Crypto Collective. It is for people who are also crypto curious. So they can pop in there, bit of a play on there, and they can come in for absolutely free. They'll find it's in what's called a school community. They obviously Google it, Crypto Collective, and they'll find it online.
Yeah, we'll put the link in the show notes, ladies and gents.
Thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
I think we might even end up rounding out the show there on that good bit of advice for people wanting to know a little bit more. Is there anything else that you want to let us know or let the listeners know about what you offer then as well, Matt?
Look, that's probably the main part, is helping them navigate the SMSF sector. I could talk about that for another hour, but I think that was probably short and sweet in there and enough for people to get SMSF curious.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, all right, perfect. We'll do that. What we'll do, folks, then is we'll put all those details in the show notes below. But look, thanks for being with us today, Matt. It was good to have you on the show. And
that was amazing. Yeah, so quick. We could have spoke for hours.
Yeah.
Oh, look, and sometimes we do, but look, we like to keep it so that people keep coming back each week and listening to us give them the news, because there's always so much to talk about. But maybe you'll come back later in the year with us again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem. But again, thanks everybody for listening with us today. Make sure you come and join us again next week. Until then, stay curious, stay connected. You can do that by joining our Crypto Curious Facebook group or our Instagram page. Be sure to hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening to us now. And if you are looking to dollar cost average into the crypto market, have a look at the Bamboo app. Use the code CURIOUS for $10 of free Bitcoin to get you started. All those details will be in the show notes below, along with all the details about Matthew that we mentioned earlier. And we shall see you all next week. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.